שוב השם אל שביזנו אפיקים בנגב שוב השם אל שביזנו אפיקים בנגב
A good evening, my holy sisters and brothers. I'm so happy. So happy that yesterday's technical difficulties appear to be in the past. We are live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. Let's light up the darkness. That was Zusha with their song Shuva, Shuva Hashem, return us God from our captivity like streams in the desert. The world is like a desert of Torah. Water is likened to Torah. Torah is likened to water. And so we want to return. We want to return to the bosom of Hashem via Torah. Beautiful song. All right, who's going to be with us as we get it going on a Tuesday night? Paula and Yehudit in South Carolina, and Stephen in New Hampshire, Melissa in Great Neck, and in California, Bill. Shalom, prayers appreciated as we are here in my corner of Arkansas, staring down the barrel of an ice storm that's threatening power lines. May you be spared. May everyone in the path of harsh weather be spared. May everyone dealing with COVID be healed. And we say amen. Sharon in Lebanon, New Jersey. Chana Rivka in North Carolina. Carol in Cleveland. Michael in Scranton. Chaim in Charlotte. Carol is praying with Bill. Nancy in North Carolina. Erin in La Mirada. Lucy in Minnesota. Lisa says it takes 10 to make a minion, that's for sure. Sue Strauss in the house. Congrats on your tech working today. That's what it's come to. We actually have to say a mazel tov that the technology is working, but here we are. Tom in Pennsylvania, Joyce in Philadelphia, Tracy in Oklahoma. Yehudit says amen. Sarah in LA. Welcome everybody. Over there on the YouTube side, Marjorie in Georgia. Welcome, welcome. Today's episode of Accidental Talmud is Daily, AT Daily, is sponsored by John Shore and the Shore family for the healing of John's mother-in-law, Evelia F. We never say last names when we're talking about a healing. But we as a community join together and pray that Evelia F should be completely healed, body, mind, spirit, throughout a complete healing. And we say amen. And John, may you and your beautiful family, all of you, be showered in blessings. And we say amen. Thank you for dedicating and sponsoring today's episode. Let's see, a couple of housekeeping matters. We had a question recently, and I wasn't quite sure the answer, and I didn't want to get it wrong. But the question came up, and there's a lot of issues surrounding it. We've been talking, all right, first of all, where are we holding? This is Daf Pei, page 80 in Tractate Pesachim, the fourth volume of the Talmud, the laws of Passover. We're in the second half of the volume studying the Korban Pesach, the Paschal offering. We're in chapter 7 today, completing our discussion of Mishnah number 5 and opening the discussion of Mishnah number 6. The question that came up recently was about women and what if a woman is tamei, is ritually impure because she's postpartum, because she's given birth to a child. So a woman, when she's given birth, is considered tamei, ritually impure for a certain number of days, depending on whether it's a male or a female baby. And so then the question is, so if she's tamei for that reason, when the temple is standing in Jerusalem, that's when this counts, when this matters, and it's time to bring the Korban Pesach. Is she obligated? So one who is tamei, and then a question that we've been discussing lately, and in fact today, is it'll also matter, is the whole population, or at least the majority of the population of the Jewish people, tamei, or most people in a state of purity? So if most people are in a state of impurity, then everybody gets to bring it. Well, and we'll see there's some exceptions to that as well. But at any rate, generally speaking, that's so. But let's say that the population as a whole is tahor, is in a state of ritual purity. So then individuals who are in a state of tuma, who are tamei, who are ritually impure, then would be excused. They'd be exempt from bringing the Korban Pesach on Passover, and they would have that opportunity for the makeup, as it were, a month later at Pesach Sheni. So then the question came up, well, wait a minute, are women obligated in the Korban Pesach? Answer, yes. It's a question because women are not obligated in time-bound positive commandments. But yes, women are obligated in the Korban Pesach when the temple is standing. It hasn't in 2,000 years, but when the third temple is rebuilt, then yes, women and men and women, Jews, will be obligated to bring the Korban Pesach if they're close enough to Jerusalem to bring it. They're also excused if they're so far away that they can't get there. But if they're close enough that they can get there, then women like men are obligated in the first Pesach. So then if a woman has given birth, or for example, it's her time of the month, which would render her tamei, if she's tamei at that time, then she could bring it to the second. But what's interesting is that the second Pesach for women is optional. For men, if they couldn't do it the first time, they'd be obligated at the second one, but women would be optional at Pesach Sheni. Those laws will come up again. We're going to have particularly a discussion about this subject in about 10 pages on page 91. Also, I've been talking quite a bit about Shema. We've been talking about the Shema prayer. And we're going to do it together in a moment. But now we're going to add one. I'm going to just try to add just little factoids about it, little teachings about it, until this subject, until it's time to stop. But it's not time to stop yet. So just a little teaching about the Shema. So when we say this prayer, and we're going to say we fulfill our obligation to say it when it's included in the morning prayer and in the evening prayers. The Shema, the first paragraph of the V'ahavta prayer, which follows the Shema, says, right, in English, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your, usually translated, might or resources. Better translation might be, and your veryness, right? Your veryness, like you're just give it your all. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and all your veryness, and you shall, you know what, I should have it in front of me, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your resources. And these words which I command you on this day shall be upon your heart. You shall teach them to your children, speaking of them when you're sitting in your house, when you walkest by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. So there's the evening and the morning. We also say it when we actually lie down, the bedtime Shema. We hope we'll have the chance to say it as we're leaving this world. Ideally, it would be the last words that we say in this world. Now, whenever we say those first 6 words, and we've talked about how it's God speaking to not only to the people as a whole, but to the individual, right? So it says Shema Yisrael, it's Shema, listen, nation of Israel, but it's also listen, descendant of Israel. And so you can take it very personally. We've been talking about you want to prepare to say Shema. Don't just jump right into it, but sit with it. Do we sit or stand? There are competing traditions. Some people stand out of respect. Most traditional Jews will sit for the Shema because these words are in the Torah directly. And when we say them, it's actually a form of Torah study, and sitting is the correct posture for Torah study. So when we say these 6 words, Then we also add between, so in the Torah is printed Shema Yisrael, and now I'm saying it just as it's in the Torah, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. We substitute Adonai, Lord, a name of God, for the four-letter name of God, spelled Yud, He, Vav, He, which we never pronounce. Then what I just said to you in English, Ve'ahavta es Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul, etc. That comes right after the Shema, those 6 words in the Torah. But when we say this prayer, when we're actually praying it, we insert a line in between, right? So we say, now I'm just saying it without saying God's name. So I say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Leolam Va'ed. Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. That line is not written in the Torah, but it is written in every prayer book. So when we say the Shema as a prayer, we insert this line in between. The origins of that line are a little bit mysterious. One tradition is that it dates back to when Jacob was on his deathbed, and he was concerned that among his 12 sons, who've already in their lifetimes exhibited all kinds of misbehavior, he thought, perhaps once he's gone, they're not all going to remain committed to God. And so it's sort of the Jewish project of making this world a home for God. And so they wanted to assure him that they were on board. They all believe in the one God, they love the one God, and they want to continue the family tradition of helping the world come closer to God. And so they say, listen, Yisrael, right? Jacob's name had been changed to Yisrael by God. So they say, listen, Yisrael, Hashem is our God. Hashem is one. And he answered them, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Leolam Va'ed. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the glorious kingdom, of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. So this is a form of great praise, extreme praise for God. How joyful we are that God has, given us life and created this world, and that we're in it, and that we've just heard good news, etc. It's exclamation of praise. It's kind of longer form of hallelujah in a way. That's one origin story for that line, one origin tradition for that line. Another is that when Moses was up on Mount Sinai receiving the Torah from God, he overheard the angels praising God with this line. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Leolam Va'ed. Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. And he brought it back to us. So when we say the Shema as a prayer, we say Shema at least, usually we just say that completely out loud. Then the rest of it, we can say it quietly, but it has to be audible to our own ear. The Shema, when you're praying the Ve'ahavta, etc., it needs to be audible to your own ear, should not be in your head. But when we say the line, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Leolam Va'ed, the second line, it's usually recited very quietly, in a whisper. So even if the Shema is said out loud, the Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Leolam Va'ed, much quieter. Why? Because it's not in the Torah, right? In the Torah, the 3 paragraphs of the Shema and the Shema itself, they're all written in the Torah. The Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Leolam Va'ed, not written in the Torah. So we say it much more quietly, with one exception, at Yom Kippur. At Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, when everyone stands before the Holy One for judgment, fully exposed, bearing our souls, saying, we've done so much wrong, we're so sorry, but we know that it's like your name is love, you love so much, you're so generous and kind to us, and we're okay throwing ourselves on the mercy of the holy court, as it were, the mercy of God's court. And on that day, we join the angels in praising God, and we say, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Leolam Va'ed. We say it out loud as the Shema, only on Yom Kippur. One other interesting thing about this line, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Le'olam Va'ed, is that if you've made a mistake, so for example, let's say that you meant to drink some soda, and the bracha for that, the blessing is Shakol Nihye B'Divaro. So that's the finish of it. But blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, by whose word everything comes into being. But by mistake, you finish that blessing Borei Pri Agafen. So you made a blessing over wine. You're not drinking wine, so that's like saying a blessing in vain, which of course is prohibited. But you did it. So what do? If possible, if you have some wine handy, so then drink some wine, then it wasn't a blessing in vain. But assuming that that's not possible, when you find that you uttered a blessing in vain by mistake, you remedy it by saying Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Le'olam Va'ed, with thanks to the OU website for that teaching today. So if you made a mistake and uttered a blessing that you shouldn't have uttered, or you blessed something correctly, but then let's say you were going to eat ice cream. Eddie Murphy comes to mind. You were about to eat an ice cream, so you said Shakol Nihye B'Divaro, the blessing, the sort of catch-all blessing on food. And then the ice cream falls on the ground, and it's spoiled, it's ruined, you're not going to be able to eat it. So again, you said a blessing over something now that you can't eat. It's like a blessing in vain. So then you would add Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Le'olam Va'ed. All right, so before we start, let us say Shema together. Shema Yisroel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Le'olam Va'ed. Okay. And then we would go on, Ve'ahavta, etc. But we're just focusing on the first line, Shema, and today we added what would normally follow when we're praying in a service, or when we're fulfilling our obligation to pray in the morning or the evening. Okay, let's do today's daf. As I said, we're on page 80, daf pei, of Tractate Pesachim. We are going to start actually just at the very bottom of page Ayin Tes, page 79. And the Mishna that we've been discussing is number 5, the 5th Mishna here in chapter 7, which deals with this subject of what happens when the majority of the community is in a state of tumah. You can't bring the Korban Pesach, the Paschal offering, when the offering or the person bringing it is tamei. But if the majority of the community is tamei, ritually impure, then we do bring it and we can eat it, even though we're impure, because the majority of the community is impure. That's what we've generally been discussing. Then the question came up at the end of yesterday's class. So what happens if the majority is impure? Okay, then we bring it anyway. If the majority is pure, then the people who are impure, they have to wait until Pesach Sheni, the second Passover, a month later, to bring their Korban Pesach. So then the Talmudic question that was asked, what if the community is split exactly in half? And we learned that the halacha on that is like Rav, that the people who are pure, they all bring it, and they have to make sure that they stay pure personally. And the half of the people who are impure, they bring it also on the first Pesach, but they're bringing it as a community that is impure. And so even individuals, obviously individuals who are impure can bring it. The point is that the people who are in a state of purity do need to guard themselves and still bring it in purity. And so you essentially everyone brings it on the first Passover, but they bring it in two different groups, two sort of different communities. All right, we continue our discussion of this question. It's going to go to an interesting place. So the Gemara addresses the matter itself that's discussed in the Baraisa cited previously. If the Jewish people were divided, half pure and half were impure, so those who were pure performed the ritual of the Paschal lamb for themselves on the first Pesach, and those who were impure performed the ritual of the Paschal lamb for themselves on the second Pesach. That is not the halacha. That's according to this one baraisa that we're discussing now. If those who were impure outnumbered those who were pure, even by one person, they should perform the ritual of the Paschal lamb in ritual impurity on the first Pesach, because a communal offering is not divided. This is the question we're going to be talking about. Is a community divided? Therefore, the entire community may sacrifice the Paschal lamb in a state of impurity. This includes those who were pure. They do not need to take care to remain pure in order to sacrifice the Paschal lamb. Again, that's according to this baraisa. That's not where we came out on the halacha. The halacha was they do divide into two groups. Everybody brings on the first Passover, but we keep the pure and impure separate. Rabbi Elazar ben Mattia says, the individual cannot tip the balance of the entire public toward ritual impurity. As it is stated, Deuteronomy 16:5, you may not sacrifice the Paschal lamb in any one of your cities. So Rabbi Elazar ben Mattia is going to learn out from that line, which doesn't seem to say anything about that the fact that if it's exactly divided, that one individual going one way or the other could tip the balance toward the community is pure or the community is impure. But Rabbi Elazar ben Mattia derives from this expression, in any one, that one person cannot be the determining factor in whether the community sacrifices the Paschal lamb in a state of ritual purity or impurity. Right? According to Rabbi Elazar ben Mattia, you have to have, the pure, or let's say the impure, have to outnumber the pure by at least two individuals before you can say the majority. Rabbi Shimon says, even if one tribe is ritually impure and all the rest of the tribes are pure. Now, this would seem to suggest to us, the way we've learned it so far is, okay, obviously if one tribe is impure, but the other 12 tribes or 11 tribes, depending on your counting, are pure, then the majority of the Jewish nation is in a state of tahora. They're ritually pure. So anybody who's impure, they should wait until a month later and bring the Paschal lamb on second Passover. But according to Rabbi Shimon, even if one tribe is ritually impure and all the rest of the tribes are pure, those tribes who are ritually pure perform the ritual of the Paschal lamb for themselves in a state of purity, and those members of the tribe that is impure perform the ritual of the Paschal lamb for themselves in a state of ritual impurity. So this sounds like the law, right, when it's evenly split. According to Rabbi Shimon, even if it's one tribe is impure and all the other tribes are pure, we're going to handle this as if the communities are evenly split. Why? Because apparently Rabbi Shimon holds that one tribe constitutes a community. When we use the word community, one tribe is going to qualify for that. And the Gemara asks, what is the reason for the opinion of Rabbi Shimon? And the Gemara answers, he holds that one tribe is called a community. And the Hebrew word here is kahal, right? So a community is a kahal, and one tribe amounts to a kahal. Rabbi Yehuda says, even if one tribe is impure and all the rest of the tribes are pure, all the tribes may perform the ritual of the Paschal lamb in a state of ritual impurity, as a communal offering is not divided. The Gemara explains that Rabbi Yehuda holds that one tribe is called a community, and since an entire community is impure, it is considered as though half the Jewish people were pure and half were impure, and a communal offering is not divided. Therefore, all of them may perform the ritual of the Paschal lamb in a state of ritual impurity. Now, that's actually a little different than what we've already learned as the law, where it's said that the people who are in a state of purity, they need to guard themselves and keep themselves pure. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, we don't divide up the population, we don't divide up a communal offering. So since we've already got half the community bringing it in a state of tuma, a ritual impurity, then anybody can bring it. So even if the pure people became impure, it's all good. It's all just one big population now bringing it in a state of impurity, according to Rabbi Yehuda. It was stated that the Amoraim, the rabbis of the Talmudic period, disputed the following issue. If the Jewish people were divided and exactly half were pure and half were impure, Rav said they render impure one of those who was pure with a creeping animal. So here we're saying if they're actually half and half, that's an awkward division. Much better that we should just say the majority is impure. How do we achieve that? If they were actually exactly half and half and we had that census taken and we knew that exactly half the people were impure and half the people were pure, so then according to Rav, we should take one person who's pure and make him tamei by having him touch a dead creeping thing, a sheretz. Then now we know that the majority of the people are impure and everybody qualifies to bring the Korban Pesach on first Passover. The majority of the people will then be ritually impure, and they may all sacrifice the Paschal lamb in a state of ritual impurity. The Gemara asks, why do so? Let those who are pure perform the ritual of the Paschal lamb on their own in a state of ritual purity, and those who are impure perform the ritual of the Paschal lamb on their own in a state of impurity. Didn't Rav himself say, if half the community is ritually pure and half is ritually impure, those who are pure perform the ritual of the Paschal lamb for themselves, and those who are impure perform the ritual of the Paschal lamb for themselves. Say, in answer to this question, with what are we dealing here? We are dealing with a unique circumstance where the ritually impure outnumbered the ritually pure by one person. The Gemara challenges this answer. If so, the majority of the community is impure. Why is that a particular condition? Why is that so particular? If the majority is impure, we know what to do. So if the impure outnumber the pure by one person, so what? It's still the majority. But the Gemara answers, Rav holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Mattia that we just learned a few minutes ago, who said one individual cannot tip the balance of the community toward ritual impurity. The Gemara asks, if so, our question has returned to its place. If this situation is considered the same as half and half, let those who are pure perform the ritual of the Paschal lamb on their own in purity, and those who are impure perform the ritual of the Paschal lamb on their own in a state of ritual impurity. Rather, this is what Rav was actually saying. If there is a Tana who holds in accordance with the opinion of the first Tana, who said that in a case where half the community is pure and half is impure, they do not all perform the ritual of the Paschal lamb in a state of impurity, and also holds in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who said that a communal offering is not divided, there is no way to solve the problem other than to render impure one of those who were pure with a creeping animal, right? So now we're getting a little bit into conflicting holdings. You know, if you have somebody who says, hold on a second, that they do not, right? So if somebody's holding by this idea that when it's half and half, okay, the ones who are pure bring it themselves, the ones who are impure bring it themselves. But there's a person who holds like that, but who also holds that we don't divide, that we don't divide a communal offering, that would be the ruling, but on the other hand, we don't want to divide the community, then we have a problem, right? So these things would be inconsistent. You could actually have somebody who rules that no, like the right answer would be to go half and half and keep the community separate, but they might also think that the correct ruling is we don't divide a communal offering. So if we have that situation, we don't want to be in a half and half situation. We want to make sure that there is a majority. And so in that case, says Rav, we should take one person who's pure and make him impure so that we have a majority. Or if you want to say that one person can't tip the balance, okay, so we're already there that the impure outnumber the pure by one, add one more, right? So now we have a clear majority. Ula said, they do not render one of them impure with a creeping animal. Rather, they send one of them who is pure to a distant place, so that the majority of the community that is present at the temple will be ritually impure. Right? So in other words, instead of taking a pure person and making him impure, what they do is they just take a pure person and send him far away. It produces the same result, that now the impure are going to outnumber the pure, but rather than just make somebody tamei by having him touch a dead creeping thing, you're going to take one of the pure people and send him so he's so far away that again he would be excused until coming to the second Passover. And the Gemara suggests, well then let them render him impure with a creeping animal, as Rav said. It's much easier. Why send some guy so far away when you could just make him impure by having him touch a dead creeping thing? And the Gemara responds, Ula holds that one may slaughter the Paschal lamb and sprinkle its blood even for someone who is ritually impure from a creeping animal. Right? Why would Ula say that? Right? So Ula is saying it's ineffective to make somebody impure by having them touch a creeping thing. Why? Because unlike when you touch a human corpse, which would render you tamei, ritually impure for a week, if you just touch a dead creeping thing, then all you have to do to become pure again is immerse in a mikveh and wait for nightfall, and then you're pure again. So even though he might be impure during the day on Erev Pesach, the 14th of the Hebrew month of Nisan, when it's time to slaughter the lamb, he could just immerse in the mikveh and then be pure that night, and so he could eat the lamb. So even though he's impure now, we actually are permitted to slaughter the lamb for him. He qualifies for it, even though he's impure now, because by the time of the eating, he'll be pure. So says Ula, that would be an ineffective way to tip the balance, making somebody tamei by touching a creeping thing, because it's like he's not tamei enough, right? Since he'll be pure by tonight, or he could be pure by tonight. He's fit to become pure by tonight. So the Gemara suggests, then let them render him impure with a corpse, which causes ritual impurity for 7 days. The Gemara responds that this solution is not implemented because you would defer him from the festival peace offering. Now, if you made him impure by touching a human corpse, first of all, it's not like human corpses are so handy in the city of Jerusalem, but even assuming that was possible, that would cause a new problem, which is now he's going to be tamei for the next 7 days. So that means he's going to be disqualified not only from participating in the Paschal lamb, but also in the Chagiga, the festival peace offering, which is brought on the 15th, on the first day of Passover itself, or during the 7 days of the Passover holiday. But he's going to be tamei for the next 7 days, so he's not going to be able to bring it at all, and we don't want to make it impossible for him to participate in the festival peace offering, the Chagiga. Right, so since he would be impure for the entire festival, he would be unable to sacrifice a festival peace offering, which is the peace offering brought by each person who visits the temple on a festival. He would needlessly be prevented from performing a mitzvah. The Gemara, needless because there's some other way to achieve this, namely you could send him far away. The Gemara challenges this response. Now too, by sending one pure person to a distant place, you disqualify him from sacrificing the Paschal lamb and you prevent him from performing a mitzvah. The Gemara answers, right? So it's the same thing. You send him far away. Now he can't participate in the Pesach and bring the Paschal lamb. The Gemara answers, his sacrifice of the Paschal lamb will not necessarily be totally disqualified. It is possible that he will perform the ritual of the Paschal lamb on the second Pesach, on Pesach Sheni. The Gemara challenges this response. Well, with regard to ritual impurity from a corpse also, it is possible that he will perform the ritual of the festival peace offering on the 7th day of Passover, which is his 8th day, right? Because you're making him impure by touching a corpse on Erev Pesach on the 14th, the day before Passover begins. So when you count his 7 days of impurity will end before Passover ends. So he could participate in the Chagiga on the last day of Passover. Maybe you're not knocking him out from that possibility. He can become ritually pure by the 7th day of Passover and still sacrifice a festival peace offering. The Gemara answers, but Ula holds that all days of the festival on which one may sacrifice the Chagiga, the festival peace offering, actually come as a redress for the one who was obligated but unable to bring it on the first day. And this actually is the law. Therefore, one who is fit to bring the offering on the first day is fit on all of the days of Passover. And whenever one is not fit on the first day, he is not fit on all of them. Consequently, one who is impure on the first day of the festival is unable to sacrifice a festival peace offering the rest of the festival. So we don't really want to do that, right? According to Ula, we don't want to make him tamei with a corpse. We'd rather not make him tamei with a sheretz, because then he could be pure that night. So according to Ula, better we should just send him away. Now we're going to have less people who are tahor than people who are tamei. The whole community is therefore tamei, ritually impure, and everybody can bring the offering on this first day of Passover. In this situation where it seemed like they were split exactly half and half. Rav Nachman said to the students, go and say to Ula that his solution is not practical. Who will listen to uproot his pegs, his intent, and run to a distant place? Who's going to say, okay, I'll go far away just to make the community impure, make the balance of the community impure? Better, you should just have him touch a creeping thing like Rav suggested, with the plan that he's not going to immerse, okay? He's not going to immerse, and maybe he won't be able to bring the Chagiga, but we need him to do this for the sake of the whole community, and he's more likely to be able to, to agree to just touch a creeping thing and stay in Jerusalem than to go so far away. All right, that's going to complete our discussion. There's more here, but that's going to complete our discussion of the 5th Mishnah. I'm almost done tonight. I'm just going to read to you the 6th Mishnah to open our discussion of the 6th Mishnah, and then I'll come to your comments and questions. Here it is, Mishnah number 6 in chapter 7. In a case of a Paschal lamb whose blood was sprinkled, and subsequently it became known that the meat or blood was tamei, ritually impure, the front plate, the sitz, of the high priest appeases God for the ritual impurity after the fact, and the owners are exempt from observing Pesach Sheni, the second Pesach. So the tzitz is the golden plate that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, wears on his forehead when he is serving in the temple. He'll actually take it off at times during Yom Kippur, but at all other times when he is serving in the temple, he wears the 4 elements of a priest's garb, plus an additional 4 elements of the high priest's garb. And one of those is this golden plate on his forehead, which says on it, holy to God. Holy to God. And we've learned elsewhere that this plate that the high priest wears sort of has it basically has God ascribes to it a spiritual power, which is that it will atone for certain mistakes that the people make. And this is one of those mistakes, right? So if a Paschal lamb, right? So there was a Paschal offering, it was slaughtered, and some of its blood needs to be sprinkled on the altar. But between the time that it was slaughtered and before the blood was sprinkled on the altar, the meat or the blood that was being carried to the altar became tamei. Once it became tamei, either the meat or the blood, so now the offering is disqualified, and they shouldn't sprinkle the blood on the altar. But somehow it happened anyway. Whether it was known or not, we're going to be talking about. But so if it happened and then they sprinkled the blood, they shouldn't have sprinkled the blood, but they did sprinkle the blood. So then the tzitz of the Kohen Gadol will atone for this error, and the offering will be accepted. If it became known later that the body of the individual who brought the Paschal lamb had become ritually impure, the front plate that sits does not atone for it, right? So if the meat of the Paschal offering or its blood became tamei, the tzitz of the Kohen Gadol will atone for it. But if the owner or one of the owners of the Paschal lamb, if that person became tamei, so he's no longer fit to eat the Korban Pesach, and we shouldn't slaughter it for him if we know that he's tamei in a situation where the majority of the people are tahor. So then we shouldn't slaughter for him. But let's say he became tamei and they didn't know about it after it was slaughtered, and then they sprinkled the blood. They shouldn't have sprinkled the blood either. But because now the tuma is not in the meat or in the blood of the offering, but rather in the person of the owner of the offering, the tzitz does not atone for that error. It only atones for some errors and not for others. The individual in that situation where he became tamei after the Korban Pesach was slaughtered and the blood was sprinkled, the individual who became tamei has not fulfilled his obligation to bring the Paschal lamb, and therefore he must observe Pesach Sheni. He would have to come back a month later. Again, if you're joining us late, all these laws only are in play when the temple is standing in Jerusalem. This is because the sages said that with regard to the Nazir, the one who takes a vow to abstain from grapes and the products of the grapevine, and included in that vow is he must not come into contact with the dead, with a human corpse. So the sages said that with regard to the Nazir and one who performs the ritual of the Paschal lamb, the tzitz, the front plate, appeases God for both impurity of the blood and the meat of the offering, but the front plate does not appease God for impurity of the body of the individual bringing the offering. The Mishnah introduces a halacha with regard to ritual impurity of the deep. Okay, so this is tumas hatehum. So tuma of the deep. Tuma of the deep is going to refer to like a body that was buried, and if you walk over a grave, right, and you're trying, and you need to stay in a state of tahara, of ritual purity, when you walk over a grave, it's bad because you become tamei. And this is why Kohanim, priests, even to this day, will not walk into a cemetery unless it's to bury a very close relative. But tomb of the deep is not where you just walk over a grave, but in other words, it's where you walk over a human corpse or a piece of a corpse that no one knew it was there. Tomb of the deep means you only discovered later that it was there, right? So this could happen, for example, that you walked over a road. Let's say you walked on a path many times, and then they do some construction and they dig a hole there, and they find out that there was a body buried under that place where the path was. No one knew it was there. When it's revealed that it was there, this would be tuma of the deep. Okay, so if it became known, tuma of the deep. A term that refers to a source of impurity that is unknown to anyone and is discovered only after it has rendered someone impure. If it became known after the offering was brought that the person had become impure due to ritual impurity of the deep, tuma of the deep, excuse me, for e.g., if he was informed that there was a concealed grave under the place he had sat in a house where he had previously stayed, or there was, a grave was later found under a path where he had previously walked. So then the front plate does appease God and the offering is valid. So it's very interesting, right? So we see that the tzitz atones for errors that involve the offering itself, but not for the people for a person, the owner of the offering, becoming tamei. An exception to that rule is when the person became tamei by tuma of the deep. The kind of tuma that no one could have known about, nobody did know about, but then it became discovered that there was a grave under that path or under that house, and so everyone who went over it was actually tamei. and they were in a state of they were tamei when the offering was brought, but they couldn't have known in that situation that tzitz of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest, would atone for the one bringing it. Okay, and we're going to stop there. So let me go to comments and questions. Okay, here we go. Sharon asks, or Sharon comments, if women are tamei due to her menstrual cycle, is it not likely that she will be so also in the following month as it is in the same time relatively of the month? Yes, and that's why women are optional, right? If they were tamei on the first Passover when they're obligated, and then, so then normally when the temple is standing, a person who's tamei at the time of at Passover needs to bring the korban Pesach at Pesach Sheni. A man would be obligated at Pesach Sheni if he couldn't bring it at Pesach because he was tamei. For a woman, it's optional the second time, and probably that's the reason. Exactly. It's 28 days later, more or less, and she might well be in her cycle again. Sharon also says, we also say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Olam Va'ed with someone as they are leaving this world as part of the vidui, right? So the vidui is like your final confession. If God willing, when we're leaving this world, we're conscious enough and have enough time to prepare that we can not only say Shema, but we could also say this vidui, like the final confession. And Sharon says, I was blessed to be able to do so with my mother, with the rabbi. My dad was already gone when I found him, but the rabbi permitted me to do so as it was so important to me that I do so as I had for my mom. Wow, thank you for sharing that, Sharon. That must have been an incredibly powerful experience. And may both of your parents' memories always be for a blessing. Stephen, I know very little about second Pesach. Are there special rules and rituals for this Pesach? Will we cover it in another daf? Yeah, I think we will be talking more about the laws of Pesach Sheni later in the volume. What do we do with it nowadays? Not much. Not much, right? Since Pesach Sheni is so much about bringing the Korban Pesach, about actually bringing the Paschal lamb or goat, since we haven't been able to do that since the temple was destroyed, there's not that much that we do with Pesach Sheni. Usually what we'll do is study the laws of Pesach Sheni as a way to observe it. And there are some other customs which I don't have on the tip of my tongue right now. But really, and what's nice is that in the Torah, this was not, God wrote the Torah, and for God, the future, the past, the present, it's all the same. God has equal access to all times, at all times. But the way the Torah played out for the people who were there, and the way it's written, is that, the laws of Passover were given, and then a group of guys came to Moses and said, hey, we were on the road away from the encampment because we were tasked with burying a body, and that's why we were tamei. We were doing a good deed, but we missed out on bringing the Paschal lamb, on bringing the Korban Pesach along with the whole community. Why should we be penalized for doing a service? And Moses said, good question. Let me bring that to God. And God said, they have spoken well. For anyone who was on the road and couldn't get to the place where I shall make my name known, in other words, the temple, in time, or who was tamei by reason of touching a corpse, they can bring the Korban Pesach 1 month later at the Pesach Sheni. So that's the way that it was added to the Torah. That's one of two examples like that. There may be more, but the two that I can think of was the other one was the daughters of Zelophehad. Right, so this were 5 daughters who were the female heirs of one man who, as they said, died for his own sin. But when the land was going to be apportioned among the 12 tribes, and it was a very patriarchal society, and so males would inherit ahead of females, but there were no males in that family. And so, these 5 women came to Moses and said, hey, so what's going to happen? Our family is not going to get anything because we don't have any sons. We want to receive a portion in the Holy Land along with all the other families. Moses said, good question. Let me check with God. God said, the daughters of Tzlofechad have spoken well. And then the inheritance laws were modified due to the petition of those 5 daughters. Okay, John, thought. Should we say the blessing that ends Lasok b'divrei Torah before we study Talmud? Absolutely. So John is talking about a blessing that we say in the morning. There are actually 3 blessings related to Torah study that are part of the morning blessings. And so, we say, blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has sanctified us with commandments and commanded us to engage in the study of Torah, or to delve into Torah. And then there's 2 other blessings that go with it. And then, if you remember, John, in the Siddur, what follows that? Right away, we study 3 passages. One is the blessing, the priestly blessing, and then, and Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may the Lord bless you and keep you, may the Lord countenance you and be gracious to you, may the Lord favor you and grant you shalom, peace. That's a verse from the Torah. Then we say these are the precepts which have no fixed measure, including Torah study and putting aside part of the field for the poor, etc. That's from the Mishna. And then we say these are the precepts for which a person is rewarded in this world, and the principle remains for him in the world to come. And those precepts include honoring one's parents, providing for the needy bride, making peace between one person and another. And that is a passage from the Gemara, right? And so the reason we put those 3 passages there, one from the Torah, one from the Mishnah, one from the Gemara, is that we've just said a blessing on Torah study, and we say that blessing at the beginning of the day to cover the whole day. And then we engage immediately in a little bit of study, Torah, Mishnah, and Gemara. And we don't want the blessing to be in vain. So if you didn't say that blessing for some reason as part of the morning prayers, then later when you're about to study Talmud, absolutely say that bracha, lasok b'divrei Torah. Very good. John Boltman, hello from Surfside Beach, South Carolina. I meant to tell that I love your set. You've obviously taken the time on your lighting and your placement of props. Most other podcasters don't take the time to do that. I love the mic in your shot. If you ever come across one of those old-timey microphones like the one Larry King used to have, grab it. It doesn't have to be functional. It just makes a cool visual. I appreciate that very much, John. It is not totally random. I have certainly thought about it. This is my office. I mean, I'm not going to pick up the camera. This is my office. This is where I work every day. But since this camera is always sitting where it is, yeah, that's that wall of my office. I will say that it was blue even before I thought about podcasting. The other walls are white, but I like having at least one, colorful wall in an office. And you find that in several of the rooms in our house. Nina and I are people who like color. And I take your point about the mic. This mic is okay. I think its audio quality is good. Visually, not that special. I do like that Larry King big silver, old time radio broadcasting mics. I like that. And finally, Lucy. Given all the purity laws around women and the fact that they care for the children, prepare the food, etc., it seems to me that overall, with all the other laws as well, it would most often be the case that the majority of the community would be tamei. Also, given that the Pesach offering is a universal obligation for everyone, it seems almost impossible to keep track of these complex rules as they relate to each individual. The sages were very wise to let the people participate when the majority is ritually impure. Amen. What's interesting, though, is I wonder... I feel like this law, it's hard for me to imagine that they applied it practically. This seems to me like one of those laws where they figured out exactly how it should come out, what the emes would be, what the truth would be in that situation. But, I don't think they polled everybody tamei, tahor, 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 tamei, 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 and like took account of everyone, or at least everyone that was in Jerusalem at that time. I just can't imagine that they did that. So, I think that the only time that they would assume that everyone is tamei is because there was some kind of event, that led that to happen, like maybe a war. Or maybe, like if there had been a battle outside Jerusalem, everybody had to cross the battlefield. So then for sure, everybody walked across, unknown bodies, etc. There were enough wars in that time that certainly that could happen. I haven't read accounts of like where they actually put this into practice. So who knows? But certainly, there's many situations like the nation divided exactly half and half, where it doesn't really matter whether it's ever going to happen in reality. They still are going to spend the time and the care to figure out what the law would be in that situation. So I certainly agree with you, Lucy. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for us today. We're all very thankful that the technology has held up today and didn't have yesterday's problems. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow, Wednesday night at the regular time, 6 p.m.